Soleil Rivers had spent her entire life believing that love was a fairy tale, beautiful to watch from afar, but never meant for girls like her. Girls who grew up in small apartments in Queens, who worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on, who had nothing but their grandmother's prayers and a stubborn heart to carry them through. So when her dying grandmother clutched her hand with surprising strength and whispered, "Baby girl, I need you to marry a stranger," Soleil thought the medication was finally getting to her. But Grandma May wasn't delirious. She was deadly serious. And the stranger? A cold, devastatingly handsome Korean man who walked into the hospital room like he owned it, because apparently, he owned half of New York's underground empire. Kang Jae-hyun didn't want a wife. Soleil didn't want a husband. But what neither of them expected was that this arranged marriage would become the most dangerous love story either of them had ever known. Before we dive into this dramatic story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our amazing stories. If you love dark romance, forbidden love, and stories with strong female leads, you're in the right place. Now, let's get into it. The sterile smell of the hospital had become as familiar to Soleil Rivers as her own perfume. For the past 3 months, she had spent every moment she wasn't working at her grandmother's bedside, watching the strongest woman she had ever known slowly fade away. Grandma May had raised Soleil since she was 4 years old, after her parents died in a car accident that left her orphaned and terrified. May Rivers had scooped up her grandbaby, held her close, and promised that as long as she had breath in her body, Soleil would never be alone. Now, at 78 years old, that breath was running out. "Sunshine," Grandma May called out, using the nickname she had given Soleil the day she was born. "Come here, baby. I need to tell you something important." Soleil set down the magazine she had been pretending to read and scooted her chair closer to the bed. Her grandmother's skin had taken on that papery quality that came with age and illness, but her dark eyes, the same deep brown as Soleil's, still sparkled with mischief and determination. "What is it, Grandma?" May reached out and took Soleil's hand, her grip surprisingly firm. "You know I've never asked you for much." "You've never asked me for anything," Soleil corrected gently. "You've only ever given." "Well, I'm asking now." May's eyes searched her granddaughter's face with an intensity that made Soleil's stomach tighten. "I need you to get married." Soleil blinked. Then blinked again. Then looked around the room as if searching for hidden cameras. "I'm sorry, did you just say married?" "As in white dress, cake, and a man I actually know." "Married. You know, vows, rings, the whole thing." Soleil laughed nervously. "Grandma, I don't even have a boyfriend. The last date I went on, the man spent 2 hours talking about his mother's bunion surgery." "Who exactly am I supposed to marry?" May waved her hand dismissively. "That fool Marcus wasn't worth your time anyway. I'm talking about a real man. His name is Kang Jae-hyun. He's the grandson of an old friend of mine. A very dear friend." "A friend?" Soleil's eyebrows shot up so high they nearly disappeared into her hairline. "You've never mentioned any Korean friends before." "In 27 years. Not once." "There's a lot you don't know about my life before you came along, Sunshine." May's expression grew distant, touched with something that looked almost like sorrow. "I met Kong Suni 50 years ago, when I was working as a nurse in a free clinic downtown. She was a young immigrant, pregnant, alone, and terrified. I helped her through the birth of her son, and we became like sisters after that." Soleil listened, fascinated despite her confusion. Her grandmother rarely talked about her past, always deflecting questions with humor or a change of subject. "Suni built something powerful over the years," May continued carefully, choosing her words like she was navigating a minefield. "A business empire. But she's dying too, baby. Just like me. And her grandson, he needs someone. Someone good. Someone with a heart that can't be corrupted by money or power." "Grandma, this is absolutely insane. You want me to marry a complete stranger because you and his grandmother were friends 50 years ago? That's not how marriage works. That's not how anything works." May had the nerve to look offended. "How would you know how marriage works? You can't even get a second date." "That's because men are trash, not because I don't understand marriage." "Exactly my point." May nodded sagely. You've been picking the wrong men. Let me pick for you. Soleil stared at her grandmother, genuinely speechless for perhaps the first time in her life. This was the same woman who had taught her to be independent, to never rely on anyone, to stand on her own 2 feet. And now she was suggesting an arranged marriage like they were living in a historical drama. Grandma, this is emotional blackmail. Only a fool would agree to this. Good thing I raised you to be a loving fool who would do anything for her grandmother. May smiled sweetly, and Soleil wanted to scream. That's manipulation. That's love, baby. There's a fine line. Soleil ran her hands over her face, groaning in frustration. What if he's ugly? What if he has bad breath? What if he's a serial killer who keeps bodies in his basement? He's not ugly. He smells fine, I'm told. And he doesn't have a basement. How do you know he smells fine? Suni showed me pictures. He looks like he smells expensive. Soleil couldn't help it. She burst out laughing. The absurdity of the situation, combined with her grandmother's deadpan delivery, was too much. You're impossible, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. I'm dying, May corrected. Big difference. Now, will you meet this man or not? Give it a chance. That's all I'm asking. Soleil wanted to argue. She wanted to list all the reasons why this was the most ridiculous thing she had ever heard. Arranged marriages in this day and age? Marrying into some mysterious Korean family with a business empire? It sounded like the plot of a drama, not real life. But looking at her grandmother's face, at the hope mixed with fear, the desperation mixed with love, Soleil felt her resistance crumble like a sandcastle against the tide. Fine, she whispered, immediately regretting the word as it left her mouth. I'll meet him. But I'm not promising anything beyond that. May smiled, and Soleil could have sworn she saw relief wash over her features like a physical wave. That's my girl. Now, help me sit up. I need to call Suni and tell her the good news. There's no good news yet. There will be. I have a feeling about this one, sunshine. A good feeling. 3 days later, Soleil stood in front of the hospital room's small mirror, trying to smooth down her natural curls and wondering if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. She had dressed carefully, a simple navy blue wrap dress that highlighted her warm brown skin and hugged her curves in a way that was professional but feminine. She had applied minimal makeup, just enough to brighten her tired eyes and define her full lips. She looked good. She knew she did. But good enough for a mysterious Korean heir whose grandmother apparently ran an empire? Her best friend Destiny had spent an hour on the phone with her the night before, alternating between hysterical laughter and genuine concern. So let me get this straight, Destiny had said. Your grandma wants you to marry some random Korean dude because she was besties with his grandma back in the day? Girl, that's either the setup for a beautiful love story or a true crime documentary. You're not helping. I'm not trying to help. I'm trying to understand how my sensible, practical friend agreed to this madness. My grandmother is dying, Destiny. And she couldn't have asked for something normal? Like a grandchild? Or for you to finally learn how to cook? I can cook. Soleil, you burned water last week. Water. The thing that puts out fires. The memory of that conversation was not helping Soleil's nerves as she adjusted her dress for the 100th time. You must be Soleil. The voice came from behind her, deep and smooth, with just a hint of an accent that made her spine tingle in a way she absolutely was not going to acknowledge. She turned around slowly and, for a moment, forgot how to breathe. Kang Jaehyun was not what she had expected. She had imagined someone older, perhaps. Someone soft from a life of privilege, with a receding hairline and the kind of arrogance that came from never being told no. Someone who would look at her with dismissive entitlement. Instead, she found herself staring at a man who looked like he had been carved from marble and then given the gift of life by some generous god who was clearly showing off. He was tall, at least 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained against his perfectly tailored black suit. His hair was dark and styled back from a face that featured sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes so intense they made her feel like he could see straight through to her soul. Those eyes were fixed on her now, unreadable and assessing. Her grandmother had been right. He did look like he smelled expensive. Like sandalwood and secrets and something dangerous that made her heart race. Yes, she managed, grateful her voice didn't shake. I'm Soleil Rivers. And you must be Jaehyun, the stranger my grandmother wants me to marry. One dark eyebrow rose slightly. You're direct. I don't have time for games. I work 2 jobs and my grandmother is dying. If we're going to have a conversation about marriage, we might as well be honest about how absurd this situation is. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or the beginning of respect. My grandmother speaks highly of you. She says you have fire. I've never met your grandmother. She's been watching. She has resources. His expression didn't change, but there was something almost amused in his voice. She's been keeping track of you for years. Your grades in school. Your career progress. Your taste in men. Soleil's eyes widened. That's incredibly creepy. That's my grandmother. Creepy and thorough are her specialties. Despite herself, Soleil felt her lips twitch toward a smile. She hadn't expected him to have a sense of humor hiding beneath that cold exterior. So, she said, crossing her arms. What do you want out of this arrangement? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not some desperate woman looking for a rich husband to solve my problems. I have my own career, my own apartment, my own life. I agreed to this meeting because my grandmother asked me to, not because I'm hoping you'll sweep me off my feet. Jaehyun studied her for a long moment, and she forced herself not to fidget under his intense gaze. What I want is irrelevant, he said finally. I owe my grandmother everything. She raised me when my parents were unable to. She built an empire and protected me from people who would have destroyed me. If she wants me to marry, I will marry. That's it? She says jump and you say how high. Don't you? He tilted his head slightly. You're here, aren't you? Because your grandmother asked. The accuracy of the statement irritated her more than she wanted to admit. That's different. How? It just is. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Fire indeed. Soleil felt heat rise to her cheeks and cursed her body's betrayal. She was not going to be attracted to this man. She was not going to fall for some mysterious stranger just because he had a jawline that could cut glass and eyes that seemed to see right through her defenses. My grandmother is dying, she said, steering the conversation back to practical matters. She could go any day. If we do this, I need to know what I'm getting into. Who are you really? What does your family actually do? Jaehyun was quiet for a long moment, and she watched something shift in his expression. The cool facade cracked slightly, revealing something more human beneath. My family's business is not entirely legitimate, he said carefully, each word measured and precise. There are people who would use you to get to me. There are dangers you cannot imagine. If you marry me, your life will change in ways you're not prepared for. Are you trying to scare me away? I'm trying to be honest with you. You asked for honesty. His eyes held hers, and she saw something like warning in them. You seem like a good woman, Soleil Rivers. Bright, determined, with a backbone made of steel. I'm not sure I deserve a good woman. I'm not sure my world deserves one. She should have run. Any sensible person would have heard, not entirely legitimate, and sprinted in the opposite direction. But something in his voice, that thread of loneliness, that hint of self-loathing, called to something deep inside her. Maybe it was the way he looked at her. Not like she was a prize to be won or a problem to be solved, but like she was a person whose choices actually mattered. Let me decide what I deserve, she said softly. And what I can handle. For the first time since he walked in, Jaehyun's expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but close. Something warmer than the ice he had been projecting. You really do have fire, he murmured. Perhaps my grandmother was right about you after all. The wedding happened 3 weeks later, in Grandma May's hospital room. It wasn't the ceremony Soleil had dreamed of as a little girl. There were no white dresses trailing down long aisles, no flowers covering every surface, no guests filling pews with tear-filled eyes. There was just a justice of the peace who looked mildly confused by the whole situation. 2 grandmothers watching by a video call, Grandma Suni was too ill to travel, and a marriage certificate that would change everything. Soleil wore a simple cream-colored dress that her grandmother had secretly bought for her with money she had been saving for years. When Soleil had protested, May had simply said, "Let me do this. Let me see my baby get married before I go." How could she argue with that? Jaehyun wore another impeccable suit, this one charcoal gray, and he had brought a bouquet of white roses that made Soleil's heart clench unexpectedly. She hadn't expected flowers. She hadn't expected him to remember. "Do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the officiant asked. "I do." Jaehyun's voice was steady, certain, without hesitation. "And do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Soleil looked at her grandmother, who was crying silent tears of joy, her thin hands clasped together as if in prayer. Then at the screen where Grandma Suni watched with an expression of deep satisfaction, nodding slowly. Two old women who had been friends for 50 years, watching their grandchildren marry. It was strange and beautiful and absolutely terrifying. "I do." When Jaehyun slipped the ring onto her finger, a stunning princess-cut diamond that must have cost more than her yearly salary, Soleil felt the weight of what she had just done settle into her bones. She was married. To a stranger. A stranger who, according to the whispered warnings she had found online late at night, might be the head of one of the most powerful Korean Mafia families on the East Coast. She was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. The answer to that question became painfully clear over the following year. Jaehyun left for Seoul the day after their wedding. "Business," he said. "Urgent matters that couldn't wait." He would be back soon. How soon? Soleil had asked, still wearing the ring that felt foreign on her finger. A few weeks. Maybe a month. A month turned into 3 months. 3 months turned into 6. 6 months turned into a year. He sent money, more money than Soleil knew what to do with. He paid off her grandmother's medical bills, though Grandma May had passed peacefully 2 months after the wedding, satisfied that her granddaughter was taken care of. He bought her a luxury apartment in Manhattan that had more square footage than her entire childhood home. He deposited a generous allowance into her account every month. But he never called. Never visited. Never sent so much as a text message asking how she was doing. Soleil had become a wife in name only, married to a ghost who haunted her life without ever actually appearing in it. The loneliness was crushing. At first, she had made excuses for him. He was busy. He was dealing with family matters. He would come back eventually, and they would figure things out. But as the months dragged on and the silence continued, the excuses ran dry. She threw herself into her work, earning a promotion at her marketing firm that she was proud of, even if there was no one to share it with. She made friends with her neighbors, an elderly Puerto Rican woman named Rosa, who made the best coffee Soleil had ever tasted, and a young gay couple named Marcus and David who treated her like a little sister. She attended events, went to museums, tried to build the life her grandmother had wanted for her. But at night, alone in that beautiful apartment that felt more like a gilded cage than a home, she wondered if she had been fooled. "Girl, I told you," Destiny said during one of their weekly dinners. "Those rich folks love to trick women like us. You give them what they want, and they toss you aside like yesterday's trash." "I didn't give him anything," Soleil protested, stabbing at her pasta with unnecessary force. We haven't." Destiny's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "Hold up. You've been married for a year and you haven't slept together. He left the day after the wedding." Soleil's voice rose in frustration. What was I supposed to do? Tackle him in the hospital hallway and demand he consummate our marriage in front of my dying grandmother? I mean, that would have been memorable. You're not helping. I'm trying to understand how you're technically a married virgin right now. Destiny shook her head slowly. This is some drama nonsense. K-drama, specifically. What kind of man marries a woman and then disappears for a year without so much as a phone call? It was a question Soleil asked herself constantly. What was Jaehyun doing in Seoul? Had he forgotten about her entirely? Had the marriage been nothing but a way to satisfy his grandmother's wishes, with no intention of ever building a real relationship? Had she been scammed in the most elaborate, confusing way possible? She was about to find out. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, while Soleil was reviewing analytics for a client presentation and trying not to think about how pathetic her love life had become. Ms. Rivers Kong, you have been requested to report to the Kong Corporation headquarters tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. You will be assuming the position of personal assistant to the CEO. Details of your compensation and responsibilities will be discussed upon arrival. Best regards. Human Resources. Kong Corporation. Soleil read the email 3 times, certain she was hallucinating from too much caffeine and too little sleep. Personal assistant? To the CEO? To her husband? She hadn't even known he was back in the country. Hadn't received so much as a heads up that he was returning after a year of radio silence. And now he was summoning her to work for him like some kind of secretary? The audacity was breathtaking. Actually, no. The audacity had stolen all the breath from the room and left nothing but pure, undiluted rage behind. Her first instinct was to refuse. To write back a scathing email telling him exactly where he could put his job offer, using the kind of language her grandmother would have washed her mouth out for. She was a successful marketing professional, not a glorified assistant waiting to fetch coffee for a man who had abandoned her. She had a career. She had pride. She had a lot of questions. And the only way to get answers was to show up. If Kang Jae-hyun thought he could jerk her around like a puppet on strings, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. The Kong Corporation headquarters was a gleaming tower of glass and steel in the heart of Manhattan, rising 40 floors above the city like a monument to power, wealth, and probably several things that weren't entirely legal. Soleil walked through the marble lobby with her head held high, refusing to be intimidated by the obvious displays of affluence. Crystal chandeliers. Expensive art on the walls. Security guards who looked like they could bench press small cars. She had dressed carefully for battle, a fitted burgundy blazer over a black sheath dress that made her feel powerful and in control. Her natural curls were styled into an elegant updo, and her makeup was flawless. She looked professional, polished, and ready to unleash fury. At least on the outside. Inside, her heart was racing so fast she was surprised it hadn't burst through her chest. Mrs. Kong. A young man approached her, bowing slightly in a way that felt both respectful and formal. He had kind eyes and a nervous energy that suggested he knew exactly how tense this situation was. "I'm Joseph Park, Mr. Kang's chief of staff. I'll be showing you to your office." My office. She hadn't expected that. She had imagined a small desk outside Jaehyun's door, like some sort of glorified secretary fetching coffee and scheduling meetings. Of course. Joseph smiled, and there was something warm in his expression that made her relax slightly. "Mr. Kang was very specific about your accommodations. Very specific. He made us redo the furniture 3 times. 3 times? He said the first desk didn't have enough drawers. The second chair was the wrong shade of brown. The third, actually, I don't remember the third complaint. I think my brain blocked it out for self-preservation." Despite her anger, Soleil felt her lips twitch toward a smile. "Sounds like he's a difficult boss. He's particular." Joseph's diplomatic tone spoke volumes. "This way, please." He led her to an elevator that required a special key card to access. They rode up in silence, and when the doors opened on the 38th floor, Soleil found herself standing in what could only be described as an executive suite. "This is your office," Joseph said, gesturing to a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Mr. Kang's office is through that door. You'll have full access, of course." Soleil walked into the space slowly, taking in the elegant furniture, the state-of-the-art technology, the fresh flowers on the desk that seemed to have been chosen specifically to complement the room's color scheme. White roses. Just like her wedding bouquet. "Joseph," she said carefully, "can you tell me something?" "I'll try, ma'am. Why am I here?" "Really?" Joseph's smile faltered slightly, and she could see him wrestling with how much to reveal. "Mr. Kang wants his wife close to him. That's all I know. For a whole year, he couldn't pick up a phone. But now suddenly he wants me close. I don't have information on his reasoning, ma'am. But I can tell you that he's been different since he came back." Joseph hesitated. More distracted. "He looks at his phone a lot. I think he was waiting for the right moment." The right moment for what? Before Joseph could answer, the connecting door opened, and Jaehyun walked in. A year had changed him. He was still devastatingly handsome, unfairly so, actually, but there was something harder about him now. Sharper. The lines around his eyes spoke of sleepless nights and heavy burdens. His jaw was tighter than she remembered, and there was a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. But those eyes, those intense, penetrating eyes, fixed on her with an expression she couldn't read. Relief? Guilt? Something softer than she expected? Wife, he said simply. Welcome to Kong Corporation. Husband. She kept her voice cool as ice. Fancy seeing you here. I thought Seoul might have swallowed you whole. Or maybe you just forgot how to use a telephone. They're these little devices you punch in numbers, and it connects you to other people. Revolutionary technology, I know. Joseph made a sound that might have been a smothered laugh, before quickly excusing himself. Something flickered across Jaehyun's face. Surprise at her sharpness, maybe. Or possibly amusement at being called out so directly. You're angry, he observed. I'm furious, she corrected, taking a step toward him despite the way his presence seemed to fill the entire room. You disappeared for an entire year. 365 days of silence. No calls. No texts. No emails asking, hey wife, are you still alive? Nothing but money deposited into my account like I'm some kind of mistress you're keeping on retainer. That's not. I'm not finished. She held up her hand, and he actually stopped talking. And now you have the absolute audacity to summon me here to be your assistant? Like nothing happened? Like you didn't leave me alone in a city full of strangers with nothing but a fancy apartment and a marriage certificate that might as well have been printed on toilet paper for all the good it did me. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, the corner of Jaehyun's mouth curved up in something that was almost, impossibly, a smile. You really haven't changed, he murmured. Still full of fire. Don't try to charm your way out of this. Answer my questions. I will. He moved his desk, gesturing for her to sit in one of the chairs across from him. But first, you need to understand something. My world is not a safe one, Soleil. I stayed away to protect you. Protect me from what? From knowing my husband was alive? From having a partner to share my life with? From basic human communication. His eyes darkened with something that looked almost like pain. From the people who would use you to destroy me. From enemies who wouldn't hesitate to hurt you to send me a message. From a war that could have gotten you killed. That stopped her cold. A war. My grandmother's illness created a power vacuum. People saw an opportunity to challenge my leadership, to take what my family built. For the past year, I've been fighting to maintain control, not with weapons, but with negotiations, alliances, carefully planned strategies. If my enemies knew I had a wife, if they knew there was someone I cared about. You cared? The question slipped out before she could stop it, raw and vulnerable in a way she hated. More than I should have. His voice dropped, quiet and intense. I watched you, Soleil. Every week, I received reports. Your promotion at work. The nights you spent with your friend Destiny. The way you helped Rosa carry her groceries up 4 flights of stairs. The cookies you baked for Marcus and David when they adopted their cat. That's creepy? He almost smiled. You've said that before. About my grandmother. I was going to say stalkerish. That too. Despite everything, Soleil felt some of her anger cracking. Not disappearing, she was still furious, but the edges softening slightly. You could have told me. You could have explained instead of just vanishing. If I had told you, you would have worried. And, if you worried, you might have done something that put yourself at risk. He leaned forward, his eyes holding hers. I made a choice to protect you by staying away. It was the wrong choice. I know that now. You're damn right it was the wrong choice. I'm asking for a chance to make it right. Wow, this story is getting intense. If you're enjoying it so far, make sure you hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think is going to happen next. Do you think Soleil should give Jaehyun another chance? Can she trust him after a year of silence? Let me know in the comments below, and let's keep going with this story. Over the following weeks, Soleil learned more about her husband's world than she had ever wanted to know. Kong Corporation was a legitimate business on the surface: investments, real estate, technology, import-export operations that spanned 3 continents. But underneath, hidden in shadow and secrecy, was an empire built on less legal enterprises. Protection, gambling, nightclubs that catered to the city's elite with services that weren't exactly advertised in the brochures. Jaehyun never discussed the details with her directly, but Soleil wasn't stupid. She read between the lines of conversations. She noticed the men who came and went from his office with scarred hands, watchful eyes, and the kind of silent competence that spoke of dangerous training. She observed the way people bowed to him, not just out of respect, but out of fear. Her husband was a mafia boss, the young CEO of a criminal empire that had been building power for 3 generations. And somehow, instead of running away like any sensible person would, she found herself drawn deeper into his orbit. It helped that he was actually trying for once. Every morning, there were fresh flowers on her desk, different varieties each day, as if he was testing which ones she liked best. She liked the sunflowers, but she wasn't going to tell him that. Let him keep guessing. Every lunch, he invited her to eat with him in his office, sharing food from the best restaurants in the city while asking about her day. He wanted to know about her work, her friends, her opinions on everything from corporate marketing strategies to which Netflix shows she was watching. It was strange, being courted by her own husband. "You're staring again," Jae-hyun said one evening, not looking up from his paperwork. "I'm trying to figure you out." "And what have you concluded?" Soleil considered the question carefully, watching the way the city lights reflected in his dark eyes. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "A monster, maybe. Someone cruel and heartless who treats people like chess pieces." She paused. "You're not. At least, not with me." He finally looked up, and something in his expression made her breath catch, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "I could be. I have been. The things I've done, Soleil, the choices I've made to protect my family. I'm not asking about the things you've done. I'm asking about who you are." It was the first real conversation they had had since her arrival at Kong Corporation. The first crack in the wall he had built around himself. "I became who I had to become," he said quietly. "After my parents died, after my grandfather was betrayed by people he trusted, there was no one else. My grandmother tried to protect me from this life, but it found me anyway. It always finds us. And now I run it. I control it. I try to keep the worst elements from destroying everything my family built." He met her eyes, and she saw the weight of responsibility sitting heavy on his shoulders. "I never wanted a wife who would be caught up in all of this. That's why I stayed away. I was trying to give you a normal life. By ignoring me for a year? By keeping you separate from me. From this." He gestured around the office, at the empire represented by these sleek walls and expensive furniture. "You deserved better than what I could give you." Soleil stood and walked around the desk to stand in front of him. He watched her approach with something like wonder, as if he couldn't believe she was still here. "You don't get to decide what I deserve," she said softly. "I'm a grown woman, Jae-hyun. I can make my own choices about what risks I'm willing to take." "And what choice are you making now?" She reached out and touched his face, feeling the sharp line of his jaw beneath her fingers. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch like a man starving for contact. "I'm choosing to stay," she whispered. "I'm choosing to give us a real chance. But if you ever disappear on me again without explanation, I will hunt you down and make your life extremely difficult. I know people now. Joseph likes me more than he likes you." A genuine laugh escaped him, the first real laugh she had ever heard from him. It transformed his entire face, making him look younger and somehow more human. "I don't doubt it," he said. "Joseph has been singing your praises since the day you arrived. That's because I brought him coffee without being asked. It's called basic human kindness. You should try it sometime. I'll add it to my list of skills to develop. Right below, learning to use a telephone and not abandoning your wife for a year. You're never going to let me forget that, are you? Not for at least another decade." He smiled, really smiled, and pulled her closer until she was practically sitting in his lap. "I can live with that. As long as you're still here in a decade." "We'll see," she said, but she was smiling too. But making their relationship work proved more complicated than either of them anticipated. The first obstacle came in the form of Jessica Blair, a stunning Korean-American woman from one of the wealthiest families on the East Coast. She was a senior executive at Kong Corporation, with perfect hair, perfect makeup, and a perfect ability to make Soleil feel like she didn't belong. "So you're the wife," Jessica said on Soleil's second week, sweeping into her office without knocking. I've heard so much about you. Have you? Soleil didn't look up from her computer, refusing to give this woman the satisfaction of her full attention. Everyone has. The mysterious black woman Jaehyun married out of nowhere. Jessica perched on the edge of the desk, deliberately invading Soleil's space. Some people say it was for money. Others say you trapped him somehow. Got pregnant, maybe? Or perhaps you just have skills in the bedroom that compensated for your other shortcomings. Soleil looked up slowly, meeting Jessica's gaze with a calm she didn't feel. And what do you say? Jessica's smile was sharp as glass. I say it doesn't matter. Marriages like yours never last. Jaehyun needs someone who understands his world. Who comes from his world. Someone who knows how things work in these circles. She leaned closer. Someone like me. Then I suppose you should have moved faster. The flash of anger in Jessica's eyes was deeply satisfying. We'll see how long you last, Jessica said, sliding off the desk. This isn't a world for outsiders, Mrs. King. Especially not outsiders who look like you. The racial undertone was unmistakable, and it hit Soleil like a slap. She had dealt with prejudice before, a black woman in corporate America always did, but hearing it so blatantly from someone in her husband's own company was something else entirely. Thank you for the welcome, Soleil said, her voice steady despite the anger burning in her chest. I'll be sure to remember it when I'm choosing which executives to recommend for layoffs. Jessica's perfect composure cracked for just a moment before she recovered and swept out of the office. Soleil sat back in her chair, shaking slightly from adrenaline and suppressed fury. She wanted to tell Jaehyun. She wanted to watch him destroy Jessica Blair the way he had promised to destroy anyone who threatened her. But that wasn't who she was. She had been fighting her own battles her entire life. She wasn't going to stop now just because she had a powerful husband who could do the fighting for her. She was going to handle Jessica Blair herself. And she was going to enjoy every second of it. The harassment didn't stop with that first confrontation. Rumors began to circulate about Soleil through the company. That she had seduced Jaehyun for his money. That she was secretly meeting with other men behind his back. That she was using her position to steal corporate secrets and sell them to competitors. The whispers followed her through the hallways like ghosts. Documents went missing from her desk. Important meetings were scheduled without her being informed, making her look incompetent in front of clients. Someone even started a rumor that she had a secret child from a previous relationship that she was hiding from Jaehyun. Through it all, Soleil held her head high and refused to give her enemies the satisfaction of seeing her break. You need to tell Jaehyun, Joseph urged her one afternoon, after she discovered that someone had spread a vicious lie about her to a major client. He would never tolerate this if he knew. I can handle it myself. Soleil. I'm not running to my husband every time someone's mean to me, Joseph. That's exactly what they want. They want to prove I'm weak, that I don't belong here, that I need a man to protect me from playground bullying. Her jaw tightened. I'm going to prove them wrong. This isn't playground bullying. This is a coordinated campaign to destroy your reputation and your marriage. Then I'll fight it the same way they're waging it, strategically. Joseph looked like he wanted to argue more, but something in her expression stopped him. What are you planning? Nothing you need to worry about. She smiled, and it wasn't entirely friendly. Just remind me to send a thank you gift to whoever invented security cameras. The situation escalated when false photographs surfaced, supposedly showing Soleil in a compromising position with a man who wasn't her husband. The images were clearly doctored, the lighting was wrong, the angles didn't match, and the woman in the photos had different hands than Soleil did. Anyone who looked closely would see the inconsistencies. But no one was looking closely. They were too busy enjoying the scandal. The photos spread through the company like wildfire, and suddenly everyone was whispering about the CEO's unfaithful wife. The woman who had tricked her way into the Kang family was finally showing her true colors. When Jaehyun saw them, his reaction was terrifying. Not because he believed them, one look at his face told Soleil he knew exactly how fake they were. But because of the cold, lethal fury that transformed his features into something that reminded her, for the first time, of exactly what kind of man she had married. Who? He asked quietly, looking at the photos Joseph had brought to his office. His voice was calm. Too calm. the kind of calm that came before a devastating storm. Who did this? We're investigating, sir, Joseph said, his own voice careful. But the evidence points to Jessica Blair. Jaehyun's voice was ice. I know. I've known she was behind the rumors for weeks. But this. He picked up the printed photo and studied it, his jaw tight. This is an act of war. Soleil stood in the corner, watching her husband transform from the man who had held her tenderly in his office to something much more dangerous. Something ancient and powerful and terrifying. What are you going to do? She asked. He looked at her, and for just a moment, the ice cracked. She saw the man beneath, the one who brought her flowers and asked about her day and laughed at her jokes. The one who was fighting so hard to be worthy of her. I'm going to make sure no one ever disrespects you again. The consequences were swift, merciless, and absolutely spectacular. Jessica Blair was not just fired, she was blacklisted from every major corporation in the city. Her family's business dealings with Kong Corporation were terminated overnight, costing them millions in lost contracts. A carefully timed press release exposed several of her own indiscretions, including an affair with a married senator and some creative accounting that bordered on embezzlement. By the end of the week, Jessica Blair's perfect reputation was in ruins, and she had fled to Europe to escape the scandal. But Jaehyun wasn't finished. He called a company-wide meeting and stood at the front of the room like a general addressing his troops. I've heard rumors circulating through this company, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent space. Lies and slander about my wife. I want to be absolutely clear about something. He paused, and Soleil could see every person in the room holding their breath. Soleil Rivers Kong is not just my wife. She is my partner. My equal. And any attack on her is an attack on me personally. His eyes swept the room, landing on certain faces that went pale under his gaze. If anyone dares to scheme and spread rumors about her again, they will be blacklisted from the Scott Group for life. They will never work in this industry again. Their families will feel the consequences of their choices for generations. No one moved. No one breathed. Do I make myself clear? A chorus of terrified affirmations answered him. Later that night, alone in his penthouse with Soleil, he finally let the mask drop. You didn't have to do all that, she said, standing by the window and watching the city lights blur through unexpected tears. It was just rumors. Stupid corporate drama. I was handling it. Yes, you were. I saw the security footage you compiled. The paper trail you were building. You were preparing to destroy Jessica Blair yourself. He came to stand behind her, his hands settling gently on her shoulders. You're magnificent when you're strategic, you know that? Then why did you intervene? Because you shouldn't have to fight alone. He turned her to face him, his eyes soft in a way she was still getting used to. Because I spent a year leaving you to fight alone, and I'm never doing that again. Because my enemies need to know that hurting you is not an option, not because you can't protect yourself, but because I will burn the world down for you if I have to. That's very dramatic. I'm a mafia CEO. We're known for our dramatic flair. She laughed despite herself, the tension finally breaking. You're ridiculous. You're beautiful. That doesn't make you less ridiculous. No, he agreed, pulling her close. But it makes me lucky. But happiness, Soleil was learning, was never simple in Jaehyun's world. His grandmother, Suni, passed away 3 months later, leaving behind a power vacuum that threatened to tear the Kang Empire apart. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of the inheritance, and everyone had opinions about whether Jaehyun was fit to lead, including his own mother. Mrs. Kang had been absent from Jaehyun's life for most of his childhood, having left his father when Jaehyun was only 5 years old to pursue a richer, more comfortable life in Korea. She had shown up occasionally over the years, always when she needed money, never when her son needed support. But now, with billions of dollars and tremendous power on the table, she had reappeared like a ghost from the past, bringing with her schemes and manipulation and absolutely no shame. This marriage is a liability, Mrs. Kong declared during a family meeting that Soleil had not been invited to, but had heard about afterward from Joseph. An American woman with no connections, no family name, no standing in our community. How is Jaehyun supposed to maintain his position with her dragging him down? She's not dragging me down, Jae-hyun had responded, his voice cold. She's the only thing keeping me grounded. Sentiment. Mrs. Kang had scoffed. Your grandmother filled your head with foolish ideas about love and loyalty. In our world, marriage is about power, about alliances. This woman gives you nothing. She gives me everything. The argument had ended with Mrs. Kang storming out, but the threat she posed was far from over. Divorce papers arrived at Soleil's office 2 weeks later. They came in an elegant envelope with Mrs. Kang's personal seal, accompanied by a note from her lawyer offering Soleil a generous settlement to gracefully exit the marriage. $10 million. A house in California. Complete anonymity. All she had to do was disappear from her husband's life forever. Soleil stared at the papers for a long time, feeling the weight of everything they represented. The easy way out. The escape from a world she had never asked to join. A chance to return to the simple life she had known before. No mafia politics, no corporate enemies, no constant looking over her shoulder. But then she thought about Jae-hyun. About the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. About the way he had defended her against Jessica Blair, against the whispers and the rumors and the endless attacks on her character. About the way he had kissed her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. About the way her grandmother's voice still echoed in her memory. He needs someone good. Someone with a heart that can't be corrupted. She picked up the papers, walked into Jae-hyun's office, and dropped them on his desk. Your mother wants me gone, she said simply. Jae-hyun looked at the papers, and his expression went cold in a way she had never seen directed at her before. For a terrifying moment, she thought he might agree. Thought he might tell her it would be easier for everyone if she accepted the money and walked away. Then he picked up the papers and tore them in half. My mother wants many things, he said quietly. She has never gotten them from me, and she won't start now. She's not going to stop. She has power connections. She has nothing. He stood, rounding the desk to stand in front of her. She abandoned me when I was 5 years old and only came back when there was money to be claimed. She doesn't know me. She doesn't love me. And she absolutely does not get to decide who I spend my life with. What if she makes things difficult? What if she turns people against you? Let her try. His hands cupped her face, tilting it up so their eyes met. Soleil, I know I've done everything wrong. I left you alone when I should have been building a life with you. I kept you at arm's length because I was afraid of what would happen if I let you in. But I'm done running from this. What are you saying? I'm saying that I love you. The words seemed to surprise him as much as they surprised her. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when I saw you standing in that hospital room, ready to fight the world for your grandmother. Maybe when you walked into my office and told me exactly what you thought of my year-long silence. Maybe when you compiled a file of evidence to destroy Jessica Blair before I even knew there was a problem. Tears pricked at Soleil's eyes. Jae-hyun, I know I don't deserve you. I know my life is complicated and dangerous and nothing like what you should have. But I'm asking you to stay anyway. I'm asking you to be my wife, really my wife, and let me spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you. She thought about everything she had been through. The loneliness, the rumors, the attacks on her character. The fear and the uncertainty and the endless questions about whether she had made the right choice marrying a stranger. And then she thought about this man standing in front of her, stripped of his armor and his power and his carefully constructed walls, offering her his heart with trembling hands. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll stay. When he pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing he had ever touched, Soleil knew that she had finally found what she had been searching for all along. Not just a husband. Not just protection. Home. 6 months later, Soleil stood on the balcony of their penthouse apartment, watching the sun set over Manhattan and marveling at how much her life had changed. She was still working at Kong Corporation, though her role had evolved dramatically from personal assistant to something much more significant. Jae-hyun had made her a full partner in the legitimate side of the business, recognizing her sharp mind and natural talent for strategy. Together, they were slowly shifting more and more of the Kang operations into legal enterprises. It wasn't fast, and it wasn't easy, but they were building something new, something that could stand the test of time without the shadows of the past. His mother had been handled, not cruelly, but firmly. A generous stipend in exchange for staying out of their lives. A clear message that her schemes and manipulations would no longer be tolerated. Last Soleil had heard, Mrs. Kang had retreated to a villa in France to recover from the stress of being denied control over her son's life. The staff at Kong Corporation had learned to love Soleil. She had a way of remembering birthdays, of asking about people's families, of treating everyone with the same respect regardless of their position. Joseph had become her closest ally, and she suspected he would follow her into battle if she ever asked. Even Rosa, her elderly neighbor, had finally accepted Jae-hyun after he had personally arranged for her grandson to get a scholarship to MIT. He's not so bad, Rosa had admitted, for a scary man who looks like he could kill someone with his bare hands. There were still challenges ahead. There always would be in their world. But for the first time in her life, Soleil faced them not alone, but with someone by her side who would walk through fire for her. "You're thinking again," Jae-hyun said, joining her on the balcony and wrapping his arms around her from behind. His chin rested on top of her head, and she leaned back into his warmth. "Just grateful," she murmured. "Grateful that my crazy grandmother decided to set me up with a stranger." He laughed softly, the sound vibrating through her body. "Remind me to put flowers on her grave this weekend." Already planning to. White roses. Her favorite. They stood there together in comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker to life below them like stars falling to earth. In the distance, a siren wailed. Somewhere, a car honked. The city continued its endless, beautiful chaos. But up here, in this moment, everything was peaceful. "You know," Jae-hyun said thoughtfully, "my grandmother told me something before she died." "What's that?" "She said that loving someone doesn't make you weak. It makes you fight harder. It gives you something worth protecting." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I didn't understand it then. I do now." Soleil turned in his arms, looking up at the face of the man she had married as a stranger and grown to love as a partner. "Your grandmother was wise. She was terrifying, actually. But also wise. Sounds like someone I know." He grinned, that rare, genuine grin that transformed his entire face. "Are you calling me terrifying?" "Among other things." "What other things?" "Arrogant. Overprotective. Occasionally dramatic. Extremely bad at using telephones. I've gotten better. You texted me yesterday asking where you put your glasses. They were on your head, Jae-hyun. On your head." "I was distracted." "By what?" "By you." His voice dropped, suddenly serious. "I'm always distracted by you. I can't think straight when you're in the room. I forget things. Important things. Like where my glasses are." "That's not romantic, that's concerning." "It's both." He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. "I love you, wife. I love you too, husband." And in that moment, with the world spread out before them and nothing but possibility on the horizon, Soleil Rivers Kong knew that her grandmother had been right all along. Sometimes, the greatest love stories began with the most unlikely arrangements. And sometimes, the stranger you were forced to marry turned out to be the man you were always meant to find. Grandma May was probably up in heaven right now, sipping tea with Grandma Suni, watching their grandchildren and saying, "I told you so." Soleil smiled at the thought. "Thank you, Grandma," she whispered to the evening sky. Somewhere, she could have sworn she heard May's voice respond, "You're welcome, sunshine. Now give me some great-grandbabies to watch over." Soleil laughed out loud, and when Jae-hyun asked what was funny, she just shook her head and pulled him down for a kiss. Some conversations were meant to stay between a granddaughter and the woman who had made all of this possible. And that's where we're going to end this story for today. Oh my goodness, what a journey that was. What did you think? Did you love Soleil and Jae-hyun's dramatic love story as much as I did? Drop a comment below and tell me your favorite part. Was it the way Soleil stood up to Jessica Blair? The moment Jae-hyun tore up those divorce papers? Or that sweet ending on the balcony? If you want to see more stories like this, more dark romance, more mafia drama, more strong female leads who don't take anything from anyone, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. And if you really love this story, share it with a friend who needs some good drama in their life. Sometimes we all need a reminder that love can find us in the most unexpected places, even when our grandmothers are the ones doing the matchmaking. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay blessed, stay beautiful, and keep believing in love.